parts A and B, mix it thoroughly, brush on your seal coat. And when it comes to putting epoxy on wood like this butcher block is very porous. So if you don't brush on the seal coat and you just put the flood coat on it immediately, chances are you're going to get a ton of bubbles. So that's going to help us out tremendously with not having a ton of bubbles all over the place. Wherever the bubbles could have came from is going to be sealed up already. On top of that, we're now going to have 2 layers instead of just one, so our epoxy is going to be quite a bit thicker. Hit all of this with some 60 grit sandpaper on my disc sander. That's right, 60 grit sandpaper. Very important to rough this up, get any of these imperfections and little bubbles that came through on our seal coat before we do our flood coat. So that way we'll have a nice, thick flood coat with no bubbles and imperfections. Let's get right to it. I'm gonna really work this in there, getting all those bubbles and imperfections out. That's very important to get rid of them now. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to clean this off really, really good with some of this denatured alcohol and a cloth. Microfiber is better, but this is what we got on hand, so we're going to make it work. Look at that shine come through. Look at that. Because it's not very clean and you pour the flood coat on there, you're going to have a bunch of dust particles in it. We're going to actually clean this a couple times. We're making a tape dam. It's very important to do this so you don't waste a ton of epoxy with all of it flowing over the edge. A lot of people, when they're doing clear epoxy, they don't really worry about losing a bunch of it. So you don't see a lot of guys doing this with clear, but I like doing this so that way I can control the epoxy more. We don't lose a bunch. We don't have any low spots, high spots, stuff like that. So basically the gist of what I'm doing here is I'm running a course of tape around the entire perimeter of it and on the inside of the sink. And then I'm gonna take another course of tape like so and putting it on the inside and kind of lipping it up on the edge of the counter. So that way I'm preventing any epoxy from getting underneath the tape and starting to pour over the edge before I'm actually ready for that to happen. All right, it's time to mix up our epoxy. We've got our Promise epoxy. This stuff is food safe, almost no odor to it, 0 VOC. This stuff is awesome. So let's mix it up, 1-to-1 ratio. Pretty simple stuff here. You mix parts A and B together. You mix them thoroughly. It says to hand mix them for a couple minutes. You also don't want to over mix them. And I personally do not like to use a drill to mix it because it makes a ton of bubbles, makes it very cloudy, and can actually just ruin your epoxy. So just take your time, hand mix it. That's the best bet. Epoxy time. You guys ready? Look how beautiful that looks. Here we go. Ah, yes. Now for the best part of the process. All of that preparation and all that hard work goes into this very moment here. So basically what I'm going to do is evenly spread out the epoxy throughout the entire countertop. I'm going to go back then with a squeegee and I'm going to move all the epoxy around and get it to where it needs to be so everything looks pretty evenly distributed. That way I'll know if there's any low spots, any high spots, spots that need more, spots that have way too much. Then I can start hitting it with the torch and get it to finish self-leveling out. I can start getting out all the bubbles and imperfections and all that kind of stuff quicker than if you just stood around for a half hour waiting for it to self-level out, which for whatever reason, some people prefer to do that. Some people think it's wrong to squeegee it around and get it into place. I don't understand that. I got better things to do than to stand around and wait for epoxy. So if you get it to where you want it, you can know if you need to mix up more. You can hit it with the torch, get all the imperfections and the bubbles out. It's just way quicker to just do it this way. So do it my way. Don't do it their way. Here's the next step. So we're gonna use a blowtorch here to help self-level this out and get all these bubbles out. So Tyler, show them you see the bubbles. All right, there we go. Now we're gonna let it sit for a little bit and then we'll keep checking this. Once it starts getting a little bit thicker, we'll remove this and watch it slowly drip over the edge. Last part of the process, we're gonna pull the tape off here. I have some extra left over. I'm gonna take this and wipe it along the edge and help it start flowing over. See it trying to slowly make its way over the edge there. Slowly creeping over. Slowly creeping over. this edge doesn't have a whole lot going on. So what I'm gonna do is take some on my hand here and rub it on that edge to help that process. Just so we don't have any roughness or any inconsistencies. And so you always want to keep a good chunk of it here for yourself. To go back later on. Do that. Don't be afraid to get your hands right in that too. It's not gonna hurt you. All right, now the last step we're gonna wanna do is on this edge here, after I wiped it on, we have like a couple little bubbles and imperfections here. We're gonna just lightly hit that. And this is what I mean, like once you get some experience, you can kind of learn these methods here. So if you see something you don't exactly like, you can kind of manipulate it to how you want it. So see, I'll take a little rippling too. You can kind of just play with it a little bit. There's gonna be a fridge there anyway. So here we're gonna come along this front side too again. Look at that, smoothens it right out. I don't see no issues, but yeah, go ahead. Hitting with the torch is going to make this loosen up and start dripping faster. So you don't want to be hitting it too hard. You can also start damaging it and burning it if you hit it too hard. So that's another thing that you're just going to learn over time. But there you have it. That's basically it. I'm going to do a couple random little touch-ups here and there, but that's it. Make sure you check back for the finished product. And there you have it. It's pretty simple. It does take a lot of work. It's going to pretty much take you an entire day and a half at least, because you're going to have to do your seal coat first, of course, wait for that to dry. Do all your prep work, then you gotta wait for this to dry. Then you're gonna have to go back and scrape all of the drips off, sand them down, clean everything up, put your sink back in, and there you have it. Beautifully done epoxy countertops. So there you have it.